water and a beer.
All right, you are good to go whenever you're ready.
All right, let me just start a timer so I can. Oops, that's a stopwatch. Cool. Hey everyone, thanks for coming out. Tonight we're going to talk about Bluetooth Low Energy. We'll talk about it from a little bit like security perspective if you're building something, and a little bit of like a hacking stuff perspective. And hopefully we'll have some fun. So as we're going through this talk, I want you to just think about this. I get asked a lot, like, why do you care about this stuff? It's not networked, it's not, who cares, right? Every device that we're going to be talking about is one hop away from a compromised laptop. So every laptop has a Bluetooth chip in it. If that thing gets ransomware, locked up, whatever, you could talk to all the Bluetooth devices. Has it happened? Probably not. Could it happen? Sure. So this is why I care. Keep this in mind as we go through. My name is Ben. I do security research. That's in quotes because that means a ton of different things to a ton of different people, and I don't feel like explaining what it means to me because I think it means all sorts of stuff. I like packets. I like PCAPs. I like looking at network traffic. I am very bad at slides. Please forgive my awful slides. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I like stuff that happens over the air. I like Bluetooth, LoRa, Wi-Fi, all that stuff. And I like stuff that you can hack with just your phone. You don't need anything. It kind of democratizes hacking a little bit, which I think is super cool. A little table of contents. So we're going to talk about just what is Bluetooth Low Energy, how it works, some stuff if you were either building something or securing something, what you would keep in mind. Oh no!
Capture device.
All right, so then we'll talk a little bit about how to secure Bluetooth devices, how the security settings work, how developers think about it, how to hack stuff. Some of this might be very basic to people. Some of it you might have never seen before. I'm mostly interested in getting people interested in this stuff because I think it's super cool. So yeah, then we'll talk about some vulns and some other stuff, and we'll do a little contrived demo, and we'll have some fun. All right. Does anybody here have, I don't know, does anybody here not have something that speaks Bluetooth on them right now? Anybody?
You don't. Yeah, you don't.
Woohoo! We got one. I would say on average, people probably have like 2, 3, 4 devices. We're putting chips in literally everything these days, whether it's Bluetooth, even, you know, you get stuff to your house with like RFID chips in it, everything, all the tracking tags on all your FedEx boxes. Pacemakers, like Bluetooth is in everything, yeah. So yeah, here's a bunch of stuff that exists that I've seen. Some of the more interesting ones, a lot of furniture, so beds. Walk into your furniture store, you might be able to play with some beds. Firearms and tasers is a really interesting one. There's some, I don't know about firearms directly, but there's some Bluetooth holsters that can engage a body cam when the firearm gets pulled. Tasers, I was at a gas station and I was scanning for Bluetooth devices as you do. And I was like, oh, there's one other car here and they have a taser. So some information leakage. Yeah, it's crazy. Locks and lights, signs, shopper tracking. You go to big box stores, there are little Bluetooth things all through the ceiling helping figure out where you are, and you can use the app and find merchandise and stuff. Yeah, little tiny things. Street lights, smart city stuff, all sorts of things. Cars. Yeah, my smoke alarms have Bluetooth now. I moved, I didn't buy them, but like my smoke alarms are smart, and they send you a little email if there's a fire, which I guess is helpful. Cool. Thanks.
Fire! Fire!
The Bluetooth what?
The email comes along with the
Socks.
alarm.
They were heated.
Amazing, amazing.
It was for controlling heated stuff.
That makes sense. Remember that later. There's one I'm going to talk about later that it's nice. I don't know if you're supposed to leave when you get the email or if it's too late then.
Hang on.
You know.
I was on my way out.
Reply all. Anybody else get this?
The idea is, don't bother going home. There ain't a home.
That's fair. If you're out.
Not so much to top 5 on Zillow.
You should call your insurance agent on the way home.
See, if it emailed the insurance agent, that would be even more helpful. Yeah.
You know
No. You should email like the police
Yeah,
and the
you should.
fire company.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a fire!
Or just use a phone call. Yeah. All right, so things that I worry about. Kinetic effects, all this stuff has kinetic effects, or a lot of it does. You mentioned Bluetooth socks. The taser, I don't know what, you probably can't like actually engage the taser over Bluetooth, but there's a lot of things that, what if you could? What if you could? I was not gonna mess with that guy's taser. I felt like that would be, maybe illegal. So kinetic effects, socks, you could, cause bodily harm, you could cause floods, you could do all sorts of stuff. Data exfiltration, so a lot of things that have there's a Wi-Fi card, it's on a network, and it also has a Bluetooth chip. Somebody nearby, you might be able to exfil data, you might be able to do something like that. A lot of this stuff exposes sensitive data that I don't think people realize. Some of it's getting better, but a lot of times I'll see people's headphones with their name on it, and you're like, oh, well, I'm sitting on a subway, there's one other person there, that must be Joe with his Beats. Temperature information, shopper counts, all sorts of stuff. Some of the stuff isn't super sensitive, but I don't think people are aware of the type of stuff that's being exposed there. Like the guy with the taser. He probably thought it was well concealed, and I don't care, but
He doesn't know about that.
yeah, he doesn't know.
What about those, I know there's an effort to make smart handguns that detect the owner before they're fireable.
Yeah, I don't know how that works, but I'm sure that'll have potential.
I don't know how far those have gotten into production. I know that people have been working on that.
I've only seen the ones that like the holster will engage the body cam. I don't know. I've heard of those that I don't really know how they work.
Okay.
Would be super cool. I imagine you could do it in a similar way. It's probably going to rely on something that you have on you, like a cell phone or body cam or something.
They usually
But-
use a ring.
Which sounds
A what?
super,
A ring,
super
a ring.
infallible.
Ring makes sense. Okay.
You'd want to use something not like I would.
Yeah.
NFC style.
You could do that too. Yeah. Yeah.
BLE's too high to fall away.
Yeah. That's a good call. Engine information. A lot of the big Mack trucks have things in their engine or on the ECU that speak Bluetooth and engage with an app to do fleet tracking and employee tracking and stuff like that. A lot of this stuff is remotely flashable. It might be done well so that you can't just flash whatever to it. It might not be. But they expose that kind of firmware update feature. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Some of them use vendor defaults. So what I see sometimes is that these different devices will just wholesale consume an SDK example that some vendor has put out. So you'll see like a lot of the same things across different devices. And then a lot of the stuff is write enabled, so you can just randomly write to different devices and who knows what'll happen. Maybe nothing, maybe something. That's the fun. All right, so we are talking about Bluetooth Low Energy. We are not talking about Bluetooth Classic. Bluetooth Classic, like what Matt was probably pairing his phone to over there for the music before, is a completely different protocol. Somehow they both got the same name, but they are different protocols. And Bluetooth Low Energy is what we're talking about tonight, and I'm just going to refer to it as Bluetooth for the most part. Bluetooth Classic is a little bit older and mostly for like you had to pair your headphones to your phone and stuff like that. Bluetooth Low Energy is probably the dominant protocol now. So yeah, as I said, whole different protocol. BLE uses 40 channels, and 3 of which are for advertising. So it advertises across 3 different channels, and then the rest of the channels, once a connection is established, it'll hop back and forth across. Bluetooth Classic was something like 80 channels. This is what the Bluetooth Low Energy stack looks like. We're not going to worry too much about the stack. We're going to pay attention to this layer right here, HCI, the host controller interface. That's just kind of how your operating system talks to your hardware. So that just interprets the commands and sends them to the chipset. And then what we're really interested in is GAT. I have my notes, but I can't see them. What? I can never remember what GAT stands for, but
Generic.
attribute something. Maybe it's just generic attribute protocol. But that's what we're really going to care about here, GAT. There has been some great work in security research at all these other levels, especially like L2 cap. We're not going to talk about that. I'm not that smart. That stuff is super cool. Read it on your own if you want. All right, so In Bluetooth Low Energy, there's a bunch of different roles that the different devices can have. Your central is going to be your cell phone. It's kind of like a client in a client-server architecture. Your peripheral is whatever device you're talking to. So my little doohickey here is a peripheral, kind of like a server. It listens for connections. It does some advertising. There's also broadcaster and observer, which work a little bit differently. We're not going to talk about them too much, but the way they work basically is there's one device that's a broadcaster, like a sensor, maybe like a temperature sensor, and it's just going to constantly send out like, oh, the temperature is 84 degrees, and there's going to be something else that's just going to consume that advertising data. In central and peripheral, they have to connect to each other. So you might, I'm sure all of us are familiar with in a phone or some device connecting to a Bluetooth device. So I mentioned advertising. Your peripheral device, your sensor, your headphones, your whatever is constantly advertising. It's sending out these packets saying, this is what I am, this is what I do. Those packets are tiny. They're like a little over 40 bytes. There's 39 bytes that you can actually stuff data into. They kind of look like this. That's just the Wireshark representation. But you see here, there's like device name might be in an advertisement. So you can, like, when you look for the device, it comes up with the name of the thing in your phone. And it'll indicate if it's connectable or not, if you can connect to it, or if it's just sending out advertisements. Also, if it's scannable or not, and if it's directable. A few different types of addresses. So if you're familiar with network cards, everything has a MAC address, which is like a hardware address that identifies that card. In Bluetooth, it's kind of similar. We have a hardware address. That address can either be public, which means it's stamped on that chip at manufacture time. Those addresses are registered with the Bluetooth Special Interest Group, and they never change. It could be a random static address. Those addresses change at boot time, so every time the device reboots, it might randomize the address. Then there's two different types of random addresses that can change while the device is active. There's either a resolvable or non-resolvable. Non-resolvable means it's just completely random and it could change like every 15 minutes or something. And then there's resolvable. For a resolvable random address, it means that that device, the central and the peripheral, have exchanged keys and they can tell each other's private address. They can use those public-private key to reverse the resolvable address and figure out what the device is. To everybody else, it looks completely random. This is just another example of an advertising packet. In this case, if you look down towards the bottom, it lists a few different services. In this one, we see battery service. So you would expect if you connect to that, you can see how much battery is left. Time service, same thing. It also mentions a dialog semiconductor service, which means we know what the chipset is in that device before we even connect to it. That might be useful, it might not be. Is your hand up? I'm sorry, I didn't realize, cool.
If you're not pairing, why is it broadcast?
So you're always, if it's not connectable?
Right, if you're
Yeah.
not in pairing mode, why is it
So there's a number of different advertisement packets that can happen. One could be for that observer and broadcaster method. If during the pandemic, Google and Apple put out these contact tracing beacons, that was all done over Bluetooth, and that's just a advertising packet that gets sent out and consumed by other devices. So there's no connection purpose to it. The same thing happens for like the Find My network, for like Apple's Find My stuff, for the AirTags and whatnot.
Or tile?
Yeah, or Tile. All of that is just constantly sending out an advertisement. You don't need to connect to it to do anything.
Okay, but-
Some of those devices might also be connectable in other ways,
Right.
but they're sending out advertisements that are not.
But something like this wouldn't be all we can broadcast.
Probably not.
Okay.
A lot of devices like that, that's headphones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So once you pair that, it's probably no longer going to advertise.
Oh, okay, I understand.
So there's passive and there's active scanning. So passive scanning means the advertisement's just always going out. Active means your central device is saying, hey, are you there? And then your headphones would probably respond just to your device once they're paired or bonded. So I mentioned we are focusing only on GAT because that's what's really interesting. GAT exposes a number of services, characteristics, descriptors, and profiles. We're not going to talk about profiles too much. Services are just groupings of characteristics, and we'll talk about what characteristics are in a second, but services are just ways we can group things logically. So some services that are defined by the Bluetooth Special Interest Group are like device information, which we looked at before, has like model number and vendor number. Battery service, which tells your battery information. Apple has a bunch of services. underneath those services, they are groups of characteristics. Characteristics are the interesting part here. They are these pairs, these key value pairs, sort of. Everyone is a UUID, so like a random string of text, and there's a value usually associated with them. We can do things like write to them, we can read the value, and we can have them push information to us. So here we have things like the vendor name or model number you might be able to read off of a device. It's really just there's a characteristic called manufacturer name, and that's the easy name for it. It probably has a long UUID that it uses. Actually, it's a short one, doesn't matter. So we can read the manufacturer name from that device just by saying, hey, what's the value of this characteristic? All of them are long random UUIDs. Some are short UUIDs. Some are assigned by the Bluetooth special interest groups, such as stuff that we might use frequently. So they like defined a bunch that they're like, oh, you're going to use like health data all the time. You're going to use, I don't know, device information. Each of those characteristics we can either read or write to, depending on what the developer intends. And then there's notify and indicate are other operations we can do. Those just mean that they're going to push data to us when it changes. So we might say, set notify on one of those characteristics, and then say it's a heart rate monitor. When the heart rate changes, it's going to push us the new heart rate, so we don't have to go read it every time. We'll talk a little bit about the security of the devices. So there's 3 different modes and 4 levels. We are not going to worry too much about mode 2, which is I don't know too much about. And mode 3 is fairly new for LE audio and like Auracast and stuff like that. So it's fairly new. I don't know a lot about it. There's some really, really cool Auracast research. There's some guys at Chaos Communication Congress this year that did a talk on Auracast. Super cool. Go watch it, but not going to talk about it here. In mode 1, we have these 4 different levels of security. We have no security, which means I can just scan your device and I can start reading and writing stuff to those characteristics. No encryption, no nothing. Level 2 means there's encryption, but that's about it, right? So the connection is encrypted, but anybody can connect to it anyway, and possibly the keys that are encrypting that are sniffable, possibly, depends. So this is when we just pair. That's called pairing. Level 3 is bonding. This is where there's encryption happening and the devices have exchanged some sort of key and they know about each other and remember each other. And then level 4 just adds this, it just does everything a little bit better. It adds LE secure, which is also, we're not going to get into that, but that adds a new layer. So pairing versus bonding, you'll hear about pairing all the time. Pairing is when the devices exchange information and can encrypt the connection, but then kind of forget about each other afterwards. Bonding is when those devices pair and then also store a secret about each device so they remember each other, like your headphones. Your headphones now always will bond with your phone, and yeah. In order to bond, there's these 4 different things that we can do here. There's just works, which means you just say, hey, I want to bond with you, and the device says, sure, that sounds great. Then there's passkey, which means that one device shows a passkey and you type it in on the other device. Before LE Secure, that passkey was sniffable. In LE Secure, it's okay and it's not sniffable. There's out of band where you do something else to pair the device. You might have used something where you tap an NFC chip to pair, or like you tap the headphones to the phone to pair. That's pretty cool. And then numeric comparison is just where is the best. Maybe out of band is the best, but numeric comparison is where both devices show the same number and you have to be like, well, that one matches that one, and nothing, it doesn't go over the wire, but they both, or it doesn't go over the air, but you see it on both of them. So, little cheat sheet for if you're reviewing a device. If you're worried about tracking, you want to use those resolvable random private addresses, or you could use the unresolvable one, but probably for your use case, they'll need to be resolvable. If you're worried about sniffing, somebody looking at that traffic, you're going to want to make sure that you pair and bond. Hey.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
if you have your cell phone and you turn it off, you turn off the Bluetooth, can the device that you didn't authorize, can it still pair to your phone?
So that's going to no asterisk. If you turn off the Bluetooth on an iPhone, it's probably still doing some stuff.
Depending on the platform that you're using?
Yeah,
iOS.
Probably no. Just iPhones, when you turn the phone off even, are still sending out some Bluetooth advertisements for like Find My and stuff like that. But in general, if your Bluetooth is off, nothing is connecting to your device. Yeah.
I was just curious about that one.
Yeah, it's
Does
stuff now is doing a lot more weird things.
Does
So
Android do the same?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah, they do for like Find My Device and stuff like that.
You have to log into a computer.
When your
If
phone
you're
is-
using your, you're using Android devices, you have to log into a computer. You check your stuff.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, I don't. I switched to iPhone like 2 years ago, and now I don't know anything about Android anymore. So. Yeah. Somebody else? Yeah.
So why isn't broadcasting when it's off?
Yeah. So for iPhone, it's specifically sending out advertisement packets for the like Find My network, so that you can log into their Find My service and see where your phone is if you lose it.
Same for Android.
Same for Android. Okay.
Which you might be angry about when you haven't lost your phone, but you're very happy about when you have lost your phone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a trade-off.
I never lost my phone. So I understand.
Yeah, right.
I've misplaced mine many times.
I have kids. I love Find My Device. Where's your phone? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when's the last time you saw it? A week ago. Well, it's dead now.
But it was here.
But it was here when it died.
Yep. And so to that point, I don't know if they're sending out any other advertisements other than the Find My, but they are sending out the Find My. They might be doing some other stuff, but they're at least doing that when it is apparently off. I think there's a little warning that tells you that on iPhone at least. I don't know if you can disable it. And then if you're worried about man in the middle, somebody getting in the middle of that connection and pretending they're you, you just want to authenticate the devices. You want to make sure they're bonded, and you don't want to use just works pairing, which is, again, the one where you just say, hey, I want to bond with you. And the device just says, sure, that's fine. We're best friends now. You can also do allow listing by MAC address. I don't know. I don't know too much about that. You can do it. A lot of the SDKs support that if you're interested. What most of you might be more interested in is, what do we do? How do we mess with these things? So first of all, don't do crimes. Make sure you are only messing with, because you can see all the devices in here right now if you start scanning for stuff, right? So don't do crimes. Make sure you own the device and have, authorization to use it. I think we all know that a little bit. NRF Connect app for your phone. Download it, use it. NRF is Nordic Semiconductor's app. All of the big chip vendors have their own app. I just think the care and feeding of that app is just phenomenal. They really do a great job with it. It's awesome. You can download that right now and just start scanning for devices. It's great. I love it. On Linux, on your Raspberry Pi, you can use HCI tool or GAT tool. HCI tool you're going to use to actually scan for the devices, and then you're going to use GAT tool to interact with that GAT layer to see the characteristics and do stuff with them. Python, there's BluePy. BluePy is pretty cool. I've found a few things a few issues with it, but mostly I can write something in Python that does what I need. One thing to remember is this is really only going to run on certain hardware. Like, I don't think BluePy runs on Windows or Mac. It's not like Wi-Fi where you just expect the drivers to all kind of just work the same way. You could get one of these little chips. This is an NRF 52840 dongle. It's about $10. It's great. I love them. For $10, if you're interested in this, just get one. And they have some desktop tools that you can use this with. Super cool. I like the Nordic stack. You might find a vendor that you like their hardware better, or you might not at all. You used to be able to do web Bluetooth. This was super cool. You could go into your web browser and scan for Bluetooth devices. You could set up a web page. When the contact tracing stuff came out over the pandemic, I wrote like a web app that would just start scanning for the contact tracing beacons near you. So you could see all the contact tracing beacons. They weren't very fun, just random text. But it was super cool. You could do that all right in a web browser. I think that Chrome dropped support for it. It was experimental. I hope they bring it back. I doubt they will. Also, CircuitPython boards all support Bluetooth to varying degrees. The libraries aren't fantastic last I looked at that, but that might be a good method. If you want to look at Bluetooth traffic, get one of these things. It's great. You just do a little bit to it, flash a firmware onto it, and you can hook it right up into Wireshark. Look at everything. It's awesome. You could buy an Ubertooth. I think that's overkill for most of what we're doing here. You can use TCP dump right on your Raspberry Pi and just look at that traffic. And then Android and macOS have like Bluetooth debug stuff going on, so you could use the debug options and create like a PCAP and actually look at the packets going by if you want to sniff Bluetooth traffic. So what do? I always scan the device. I'll open up NRF Connect and find the device I'm interested in. You know, it just kind of looks like this. I should have put a screenshot up there, but you can see, oh, there's Ben's MacBook Pro. I wonder, that must be mine. And then you can connect to the device, and it will show you the list of characteristics. So then you can start reading them and see what they look like. What are they? If there's some UUIDs that you don't know, Google them. This part is just kind of, do your analysis. If you own the device, again, don't do crimes, but write to some of those characteristics. What happens if you change something? If you read it and it's an A, change it to a B. What does it do? Does it do anything? Maybe nothing, but maybe something. Sometimes it's going to be a little more involved than that. Sometimes it's going to be big blobs of data that you can't just mess with that easily, but you can do a lot of this pretty easily just by looking at the devices around you. What did you find?
Running, speeding, cadence.
So that sounds like somebody's, yeah, there you go.
It's me.
Nice.
Your own device. Congratulations.
Are you running right now?
Let me check.
Maybe they'll tell you over Bluetooth.
So you can also reverse the app. If there's an app, there's always an app for everything. Find the app. Reversing isn't hard. For Android apps, you just download it, open it with like something like JADX GUI, and it'll show you the reversing. You might not even have to trace like functions. You could probably just look for UUIDs in the app. If you search for UUID, it's going to come up with a lot of stuff, but you can probably narrow it down to the Bluetooth specific stuff and see.
That's me.
Love it. We have a convert. So like this one, I just searched for the UUIDs that I wasn't familiar with. Nice. And you can see this one, there's some stuff that's like, that makes sense to what it is. Like, oh, it's a faucet. And oh, this one says maintenance data or whatever. So you might not even need to really reverse the app. You might just be able to look through the disassembly and find something. That would be cool.
A faucet can have a Bluetooth. You and I have different definitions of maintenance.
Wait, I don't think I said that it makes sense that it had. I meant makes sense that the characteristic was used for that.
That's me.
So yeah, you just want to, it's really just research. You just want to figure out what stuff does. You could go through and look at the function code and see what's actually happening, how it's interacting with that device. But a lot of times, this is good enough to understand what the device does, what the different characteristics are, and how you want to mess with them.
I'll go home and scan my washing machine.
See if you can make it start.
Well, no, it has one of those diagnostic apps.
Sweet.
I've never used it, but the little icon is right there. I'm like, I bet that's Bluetooth.
It might be.
Is your refrigerator running?
Probably is.
Yeah, you can find that over Bluetooth.
You can.
I think I
Go home and scan for devices around you. You will be surprised at how much you see, especially if you live in an urban area.
Why are my speakers speaking? I don't get it.
Oh, sorry, there's a tracker there.
Oops.
I need to change the battery.
Oops.
Wait, what? Again?
So yeah, anything that you find, obviously test it out on devices that you own. You might need to pair with a device. Sometimes this stuff just works and you don't need to actually do anything and you just connect and write to characteristics. You might need to pair with it. Pairing is free. You can pair with stuff. Sometimes.
He's gonna go for a run.
Bye. Think we can make him go for a run?
Yeah.
No.
Look out the window.
Is he out there?
Sure.
You're dead.
Did you have luck? No? But pairing and bonding is free. Sometimes different characteristics have different permissions. So like you could read this one, but this one you need to be paired or bonded for. So you're just going to have to play around with it. What's up?
How do you know whether, because it seems like most apps just say you're pairing, right? How do you know if it's paired versus bond a way to know. Like if you want to know if your wearables are only going, like, have which of the security modes.
I think that's a good question. I'm not sure offhand. I think most of them are going to be bonding for the stuff that you're talking about, like your headphones and smartwatches and stuff.
Right.
I'm not sure offhand.
I found a flipper.
Several.
I did bring a bag of stuff just so there was like some stuff to scan for in here. It might be my flipper. Kittens don't have Bluetooth yet.
Yeah.
There was a radio cat in the CIA.
All right, all right.
It's off for another run.
So,
Hallway jogging.
so what I love, or well, actually one other thing, some of these characteristics, there's UART. So UART, if you're not familiar, is like serial for like a serial protocol. So a lot of early on, chipset vendors were like, how do we get people to convert their like wired stuff to Bluetooth? And they were like, oh, we'll just make these UART characteristics. So anything that was happening over serial, they could just now put it into the air and it'll just work the same way. So UART usually is, there's a transmit characteristic and a receive characteristic, and you connect to both of them, and one sends data back and the other you send data to, and it's kind of like a little shell. So most of the chipset vendors implement some sort of UART. You might take a look at that. That's pretty cool. I keep wanting to write an app that will just kind of be like a Bluetooth UART terminal thing. I haven't done it. Maybe someone will write that for me, maybe. That would be cool. So I love that you can do like so much with your phone. You might not be able to get the last mile, but you can start and do a ton of recon, figuring stuff out just with your phone. I think the democratization of like hacking is super cool. You don't need anything. Oh yeah, your device might also have firmware update. We mentioned that before. Can you make a custom firmware for it? Can you flash it? I don't know. We'll talk about that in a second. So there have obviously been some cool vulns out there. Vandy Vape, this vuln, somebody found this, it was super cool. This is what got me into this stuff. They published an awesome little Python script that you could mess with the Vandy Vape. So the wording, I had it in the notes, the attacker may be able to trigger an unintended temperature in the victim's mouth and throat. That's not great, not great. So yeah, there was like a setting on there, it was just a characteristic that was like temperature. And you could be like, oh, set it to 150. 8 million. Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
I think there was one other thing you could change too. I forget what it was, but maybe it was the flow.
It's the
Maybe it was flavor.
exploding battery bits.
Yes. Yeah. Sloan faucets. We were talking about faucets before. They have this series of like industrial faucets and smart flushometers to like flush toilets that have all this Bluetooth features so that the maintenance people can do stuff to them. Someone that is giving a talk tonight found this one where you could remotely trigger them to turn on and do stuff, which is kind of crazy. So you could probably cause a little flood in a bathroom if you wanted to. Owl Labs Meeting Owl. This was like a little webcam that sits on your conference table. And there were some, yeah, it looked like an owl, and it like turned around to look at people when they were talking, I think. There were some phones in the Bluetooth stack that allowed a bunch of different things, like expose the Wi-Fi default password. That would be cool. Yeah. So actually, CISA put those for a brief period of time on their known exploited vulnerabilities list, which they're only supposed to do if there's actual evidence of exploitation. If there was actual evidence of exploitation of those, I think that would be super cool, because I don't know what that would even look like, because there's not network traffic, there's not like an endpoint. Anyway, they took it off, but I thought that was cool. And then we mentioned the lower level stuff. There's all sorts of cool lower level vulns you can go read about and look at, but are a bit over my head and I'm not super well versed in. But these are some cool ones that happen at the GAT layer. So, direct firmware update. A lot of the vendors do this really well, and you have to actually have the firmware signed, and it actually checks the signature and stuff like that, at least in their SDKs. I haven't gone through all of the vendor stuff. I don't know for sure if everybody does it well. I think there's some stuff out there that doesn't do it well. But the fact that but many of these devices expose like a firmware update feature that you can just write to and possibly send a firmware to, I think is an attack surface that we have to think about at least. So, think about something on the network. If you have something over the internet that you could just send firmware to, even if it's going to reject that firmware, if it's not signed, you're still writing bytes there. You might be able to do like a buffer overflow or cause some sort of like overread or something like that. I don't know. Like I said, a lot of the vendors try to help developers do this really, really, really well because it is kind of crazy. But just know that there's this service on a lot of devices that you could write a firmware to. You could put it into firmware update mode potentially just from your phone. Again. All right, I have a little demo I have right here. This is a smart light switch flipper. If you want to put in smart lights but don't want to rewire your house, it has like a little servo in it, and you like swipe up on it, and it flips your light switch. Also remotely controlled by an app.
Quick question before you go any further. Who's the manufacturer on that?
Switchmate. I'm sure there are other ones. Why?
I know somebody who works at Lutron, and if they make anything like that, I'm gonna go talk to them about it.
Okay. All right, so I am not going to do this one from my phone. I'm going to use this little dongle I talked about before, just because it's easier.
Live demo, here we go.
Woo! If it doesn't work, it's your fault, now that you called me out.
No, he did.
Oh, was it you? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm looking at like hardware. It's not working.
All right, so this is the desktop version of the NRF Connect app. I'm just using it to talk to this little dongle here. $10 dongle, go buy one. They're good stuff. Probably all the vendors have one, I don't know. I like the Nordic stuff. So I'm just gonna click Start Scan. And wow, there's too many stuff, too many things. I somewhere have the first 4 of the MAC address just so I can find it quickly. Or first 3, whatever. Options, sort by, filter. There it is. All right, so this is the device that I want, just because I have the first the first bytes of its MAC address, just so I could find it quickly. This one doesn't change the address. It's not randomized. Ooh, somebody might be messing with it. So we found it, we connected to it, and now we have a list of all the services. Some of them are the UUID. These ones are ones that we don't know about. Some of them are just like a name because the app knows about them. The Bluetooth Special Interest Group maintains them. All right, so we see battery service. We can read the battery. Oh, 15, I better change those batteries. Device information, we can verify the name of the device. It is in fact Switchmate. Some other information. Here's one that I don't know about. This is probably device-specific stuff. This is probably your application stuff here. Let's see. This is where we're gonna get a demo fail. Oh, there we go. All right, so then we start looking at them and like, these don't mean too much. You could convert some of these to text if you wanted, or try to mess with some of these values, see what they are. That looks like a MAC address to me. I don't know what that is, or maybe, I don't know. Yeah, C1, E8. Yeah, this one looks like it's just the reverse of the MAC address actually, so that's cool, I guess. And then, hey, here's some zeros and ones. That's interesting. What do you think we should do? Should we change it to a 1?
Yes. Make the 0 1.
Let's see. We'll change it to a 1 first.
Device catches fire.
Device.
I expected a 1 or a
Well,
0.
it was less dramatic, but it did just go. I'll connect to it again, and we can do that again. I need something that has like a loud sound. All right.
Just stick your finger in there.
So we change it to a 1, and we'll click. There it goes. Okay. It took a while to update in the app. So not a super dramatic demo, not a super complex thing, but like this is what you're doing, right? You're finding stuff and you're like, oh, what happens if I do something here? Change that, right? It's super easy, you can do this from your phone too. Probably someone is going to start doing that soon. Have at it. I also,
You didn't actually pair or anything to that, did
No, you didn't need to pair. So that's like just works.
You're just kind of like, hey, there's a Bluetooth thing. Let's change some bits around.
Yep.
And there we go. The lights are changing.
Yep.
All of a sudden, someone thinks their light switch is possessed.
Yep.
Sounds like fun with the neighbors.
Sounds like fun with the name.
Just saying. If you live in a city. All right. So range is an interesting question, but generally there's 3 categories of devices. There's class 1, 2, and 3. I can never remember if it goes up or down, but the lowest class is like 3 feet, 1 meter. Then it's like 30 feet, and then 300 feet. So
Also depends on your antennas.
there's a lot of variables here. Yeah, I've seen stuff that claims longer too. I don't know. I've seen some like interesting tests. So I
Just give it a shot.
usually assume stuff is going to be like 30 feet. Safe assumption. Yeah. And they both, like, it depends on both of them too, right? Both chipsets. So
Fancy antenna, you can fucking get with
yeah. I also wrote this little BLE CTF. So if you're scanning and see that, I didn't make this. I forget the guy's name that did. I bought this like many years ago and just found it. And I was like, oh, I should bring that tonight. It's a little CTF on a little SB32. So if you see BLE CTF, it probably can't take too many connections, but have at it. You might have fun with the CTF. You could probably do it all from your phone. Most of it, at least.
Is it the Hacknar one?
What is it?
Hacknar, HACKGNAR?
That sounds familiar. There's a couple that I've seen. Yeah. That's probably it. And so, just as a reminder, I'm not going to make the slides big again, but like every Bluetooth device is one hop away from a laptop. So in this case, I used this dongle just because I knew I had software that would talk to it. But if you wrote something for the Bluetooth radio in your laptop, you could probably create a malware that could mess with lights and locks. Or, not you, somebody could. A threat actor could. And I think we'll see that. I really do. I've been saying this for a while now, and nobody ever believes me, but I think in a few years, maybe 5 years or so, we'll see stuff like that happen. Who knows? Happy to be wrong. But I just want more people to see this stuff because I think it's super cool, and I think it's super cool that like you can just see all this data in the air and nobody knows that it's there. So yeah, that's what I have. I am happy to answer any questions. You are welcome to mess with those devices. I have some other stuff too. I can tell you what it is. Yeah.
So I,
Hey.
I have a mic so we can better pick up questions. Let me bring it over.
Ooh,
I know I haven't used it the whole thing, but
these are like the things that are in department store
right.
ceilings.
So,
Yeah.
what is the difference between Bluetooth low energy and traditional Bluetooth?
They're different protocols. I only really know the channels that traditional Bluetooth or Bluetooth Classic uses, like 80 channels, and Bluetooth Low Energy is like 40. The channel hopping scheme is different, I think, because Bluetooth Low Energy, as the name implies, uses lower energy. Classic Bluetooth was kind of a power hog. Other than that, that whole stack, like the GATT stuff, is not in Classic Bluetooth. They're different protocols. Beyond that, I don't really know.
So, it's safe to assume that like the device would use lower energy. It's not just a lower transmission power.
Usually, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that I would assume that. I think generally most chipsets are going to support both. There's a lot of stuff that I think is just BLE now. But for a while, it was like if your thing had Bluetooth, it was Bluetooth Classic and Bluetooth Low Energy. But now I think chipsets are just BLE now, or it might be SDK dependent. I'm not sure.
Okay.
anybody else? I don't know if you can see him through the post. There you go.
So for those 4 levels of security, which do you think is more common in the wild now? The most secure or like the completely insecure, or somewhere in between?
Yeah, now I don't really know. For a while, like everything was just works, or almost everything you could read off it without pairing, even if it needed to pair for some more advanced functions. Now I'm seeing more and more that even like a good example is Apple. You used to be able to read like the time service and the battery and like device information and possibly like the person's name, that like custom device name. Now you can't see a lot of that on Apple devices at all without pairing or bonding. So I don't know what's the most common. That's a really good question. I still see a ton of stuff. I mean, if you're scanning around the room, there's a ton of stuff that you can just connect to. It just works. Yeah, I think people are thinking about it more, but I think still it's pretty wild, wild west.
Thank you.
Sure.
What is the fingerprinting opportunities for when like it's advertising, but it's not necessarily paired?
So you're asking the fingerprinting opportunities when it's just advertising?
Yeah, exactly. So like I guess it is for devices that are advertising, are they generally like if it's the same brand type of devices all the same, or is there going to be a good variance between them as far as like battery or whatever other details are, even if it's encrypted?
So devices of the same vendor are probably going to look pretty similar if they have a similar function. The things that might, if you're like thinking, how can I look at this advertisement and know more data about the type of device? Some things that might be similar are intervals between the advertisements, specifically those services that they expose. So like you might see, you know, this UUID and be like, oh, I've seen that with all of SwitchMate devices. That's what I could think of right now for fingerprinting. Really, I think where you have an opportunity to fingerprint devices is when you connect to it and you have those lists of services and characteristics. Even without reading them, I think the set that's exposed, I think, is pretty unique to device class. There's a couple of papers on doing that to varying degrees of success. I think it's doable. I don't know any vendor that's doing that right now, but it's interesting.
A separate question. What about triangulation for location for this stuff?
So I believe you can do that as is. Bluetooth, I want to say 5, BLE 5 maybe, introduced
Signal power.
signal, what is it?
Signal strength.
It's channel sounding, where you can have two devices that can tell each other how far they are from each other to like very good accuracy. I haven't played with it yet. I have a couple boards at home that I want to try it out on. That's not triangulation exactly, but with three devices that can tell exactly how far apart they are, I think you have triangulation. I think right now you can do it with signal strength to varying degrees of success, but if you look at the RSSI, you have a decent proxy for distance, and if you have enough devices, I think you could do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
This isn't a question, but it's a comment touching on the fingerprinting location and the Bluetooth advertisement's privacy.
Yeah.
So taking that MAC address of the name, you could put it in the Weigel.net, which is like war driving. They do Wi-Fi, cellular, and Bluetooth devices. So like I just took a device that was in the room here now and put it on Weigel and saw that that person was also in New York City at some point. So there's other privacy concerns with, like you mentioned, like maybe it'll say John's iPhone or whatever, and someone could get your name. They could also get your location by taking that name of that device, putting it in Weigel.net, and finding somewhere you've been, and it might even be your home or wherever your work. So something else to keep in mind about the Bluetooth advertisements.
That's a great point. I will say that a lot of the things that you carry with you now, like your iPhone, your smartwatch, your whatever, are rotating their MAC address every 15 minutes, so they're not going to make sense if stored in Weigel.
The MAC address I looked up was the same today as it was back in October. That was an iPhone or whatever. But
It was an iPhone, or?
it wasn't.
Oh, yeah. I brought a bunch of stuff that like some of these things like definitely have static MAC addresses and would. Like, it's definitely a risk. Just a lot of the real consumer hardware is changing now. So, but that's a really good point that you can look that stuff up. That's interesting to me. That I wonder what's consuming. Like, what is putting that in there in the first place?
Just people war driving, like having
Like Bluetooth war driving.
uploading.
I didn't think there were too many people that actually did that. That's neat.
Crowdsource information.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Scan for devices.
Cool.
Anybody else? I don't know what I stepped in, sorry. Just squeak here.
So I wanted to ask if you had heard about the paper that just came out, but I think it may be fixed in most stacks, but somebody had found a way, researchers found a way to turn regular Bluetooth beacons into a format that is actually trackable within the AirTag Find My network. And have you had a chance to look at that?
I looked at it very briefly. I didn't get to a point where I fully understood what they were talking about. They also didn't release all the details yet. They're going to talk about it, in a couple months or in a paper that's going to come out. So I don't have too much of a comment yet. I know there's other projects that let you fake or use the Find My network with like open source code. I'm not 100% familiar with that. I know what they did was kind of special, and I'm not really familiar. And they didn't release the details, so I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, and I can't wait to see what it actually is.
Cool. Anybody else?
In general, I will say I think the Find My stuff is done really well. I mentioned the COVID contact tracing beacons. It's basically the exact same system, just one was for tracking people during a pandemic, and one is for tracking devices. It works really well. I think the privacy guarantees are pretty good in general, yet there's some interesting flaws that I don't know about yet, but I think they do a good job with designing those things. So.
Awesome.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you all. I appreciate y'all.